Okay, so we are in the middle of chapter 2 of Tanya, not moving too quickly. We had a question, we had an answer, we had a mushal, a parable, which we are in the middle of unpacking. So, quick reminder of all of the above. We began the chapter by explaining the enormous, unique status of the soul, the godly soul, the soul of the Jew, is not like all creation, which is spoken, which is godliness, but rather it's literally from the breath of, from the thoughts of, from the very being of God Himself. That's the soul. So, after proving that in various ways, the question was, well, if that's so, which of course it is, then why does it seem like there's such different levels of souls? Why does it seem that some Jews are spiritually seemingly on such a lesser level than another Jew if everyone's soul is this literally breath of God, thought of God, from God Himself? I mean, every person should be unbelievable, and we should all be the same unbelievable because we all have this enormous power of God, of soul inside of us. So that was a question that we're actually spending the bulk of the chapter unpacking. And to understand this, the Rebbe gave a pretty elaborate storyline, mushal, parable, which is not a king and a prince type parable. It's actually discussing the development of a baby. And we discussed how the baby starts from this one drop, which goes all the way back to the brain, as we said, brain of the parents, brain of the father. And from that one seminal drop, invested in the womb of the mother, develops, and give us some 9 months, becomes a child, a human being. And we said, okay, wow, that's a great reference to answer our question. Because that's what's happening with the souls. They all start from that same origin point, highest level of highest world, seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Vatzilas. And then every soul has its own mission. Every soul travels its own path. And based on the journey, that determines how, in essence, covered over and constricted the soul's energies are until that soul enters the body and comes into our physical reality. And that's why people can look so different, even though we all have the same soul, which in its origin is highest level, highest world, Chachma Vatzilas, seminal wisdom of the world of being. But as it enters our world, it could look, because it seemingly is very different. The story, so to speak, went on to say, and even afterwards, you have this human being walking on planet Earth. Still, even the lowest parts of the body, like the toenails of the body, still have a connection to their origin, the brain of the Father, through the brain of the Son. Which would mean that even after the child is born, every part of the child, going to the lowest part, least in the development part, still can trace back to the origin through that part of the child that didn't really change, the brain. The child starts off as brain matter, and when everything else changes, that part changes the least. That part still has a connection to its origin. And as such, through the body's connection to brain, there's still a connection from brain to brain of the body to the origin of the body, to the, so to speak, brain of the Father, which unpacking that meant, and this of course seems like, what? Why do we even have to go here? Truly, I don't know, because everyone wants to bring up this point very strongly, that even after we have all these souls that have traveled so far, and they're in this world, and they seem very far from their origin, from the seminal wisdom of the world of being, from Chacham Vatzilas, but there's still the ability to connect back, because we all have a connection to the brain of the child, to the greatest, holiest souls that are still like brain matter, the tzaddikim, the very, very, very ultimately righteous, godly people. And through them, their brain to a brain, they're still, so to speak, one with their origin point. And through them, we can also be one with our origin points as well. So that is in overarching terms what we're in the middle of, and we are in the middle of that. So it was interesting because last week, Frumma commented that this really like heightened her love for her fellow Jew, really understanding in a sense like how we all literally started off in the same place, and even as we travel, we're still all in this together. We're still forming the body of Jewish people incorporated, and still have this connection back to our origin point, all of our origin points. And I thought that was really beautiful to take this concept and say, oh, it's not abstract, it's not theoretical. It actually has to do with our lives in a very relevant way. And I hope we all can find those applications like, wow, I never knew how powerful I really am. Because, hey, that's me. I'm not learning about some foreign species out there. This is me. I'm learning this to understand myself. This is my soul's journey. And I don't know if I became a toenail or an elbow or a piece of skin cell, but wherever we are in the body of the Jewish people, yes, we all started off the highest level of the highest world and truly beyond that as well. And we all still can reconnect to our origin. As we're saying, through the brain of the sun, through the tzaddikim, through the Jews that are still so connected, we can also find ourselves and who we really are. And that piece of God that's so strong within every single Jew, including ourselves. All right, so let's read some of this inside. We are on page 12, so to speak, the other second half of page above. We're about exactly halfway-ish the page, and we just finished reading inside the storyline, the development of the child, and explaining how the child, even after the person is born, walking this world as an independent human being, still has a connection to his origin. So what the Rebbe wants to prove to us here, so we have, reading inside, we have not yet read what this all symbolizes, what this all represents. We've read something that's supposed to make a lot of sense to us naturally, part of the human experience. And then from what we do understand, we're going to extrapolate to what we don't understand, which is the point of every mashal, of every parable, to give us something that's in our world. It's not such a stretch for our brains. And yeah, that I know, or that I didn't know, but makes sense. Okay, great. Now let's decode that and stretch a little bit to what we didn't know. But before we do that, the Rebbe is now going to prove this concept of the connection of the nails to the brain. Because again, the last thing we read, V'gam achshav b'ven, and also now in the son, the child, the baby that was maybe a baby 5 years ago or 45 years ago, that baby, that child, Yinikas hatzipranayim v'chayusam, the sustenance, the vitality of those nails, even those toenails, still, nimshechas me'amayach shabarosh, still coming from the brain, in the skull, in the head. So the Rebbe is going to say, there's this connection. Again, toenails, that's something, toenails specifically, are symbolizing like the final, lowest dimension. The brain is a nerve center. The brain is the highest level. The brain is what's guiding the entire body. And the lowest has this connection back to the highest. Again, no human being should be discarded. No person should be like, oh, they're too low, insignificant, unimportant, neurologically divergent, whatever. Like, not for us. Every single person is really important. And every single person has this connection back to the brain of the sun, their own brain, the spiritual brain of the Jewish people, the tzaddikim, the very, very, very holiest Jews, and connecting back through that to the brain of the Father, to the seminal wisdom of God himself, highest level of highest world, Chachma Vatzilus, where all our souls, every single one of us, including the ones we might think are different, not important, no one's discarded, no one's unimportant to God, no one doesn't have a very vital role to play. So the Rebbe now is going to give a proof from both aspects of Torah, meaning Torah can be viewed as there's the revealed Torah, we call Nigla, like the Talmud, law, and there's the inner dimension of Torah, the concealed, esoteric Torah, like Kabbalah. And for both, we see in different ways this connection between nails and the brain. Kedisa b'Gemara, Nida Shama, as we learned there in the Talmud, in the Tractate of Nida, Luvan Chemimenu Gidim The atzamos tzipernayim, from the white, the luvan, the white of the father's drop of semen, comes forth veins, bones, and nails. And you could say, okay, I mean, the Talmud is just, you know, sort of randomly listing some things, but we don't look at Torah that way. We don't say, yeah, like it meant to say the whole body. So just grab 3 discrete parts. No. There's a reason it says veins, there's a reason it says bones, and there's a reason it says the nails. So we see from here that specifically the nails are enumerated as yes, go all the way back to that drop which originates in brain matter. That's from the revealed part of Torah. And also in the esoteric dimension, the Kabbalistic, Nistar, the hidden dimension. In Eitz Chaim is one of the works of Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital, as we mentioned before, is the recorder, so to speak, the stenographer, if you will, of the teachings of the Arizal HaKadosh, of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who never wrote down anything of his own, but all of his teachings were transcribed by Reb Chaim Vital in his various works. So in the writings of Reb Chaim Vital, which means this is the teaching of the Arizal HaKadosh, is so levushim she'adam harishon began Eden, in discussing the esoteric mystery of the garments of Adam in Gan Eden, in what we call Garden of Eve, meaning the Garden of Eden, meaning the original place where man was originally planted, that they were nails from this dimension of God's thoughts. Now, of course, this is based on what it's written. There's commentary on what were the clothing that God gave to man, right? It says first they were naked, and then we have the whole very, very significant incident with the snake in the garden and that primordial sin. And then after that, God gives them clothing. And there's 2 explanations in the Talmud. What were the clothing? One of them was that it was some very smooth, hard, supple substance, like nails. I mean, clothing of nails, we don't know. Something that protected them and covered them and had this like strength to it, but at the same time was supple nails. But Kabbalistically, we're told, well, these nails represent a dimension of God's energy. And this energy of the nails emanates in God's thoughts. So again, we see here a second source. One was in the revealed part of Torah, and this is in the esoteric dimension, some link between nails and the brain. So when the Rebbe keeps saying, this is what the Rebbe is basically telling us, nothing is random. When I keep telling you that even the nails, yes, of course, every other part of the body as well. And I'm saying the nails because the nails are the lowest part, but guess what? There's something more than that. There's something deeper than that. Do we know? Maybe not. But there's some depth here that the Rebbe is alluding to, that specifically the nails, I'm saying, we see, have some connection going all the way back to the brain. So at this point, the Rebbe is now going to tell us what we've already discussed, but obviously we'll get it better once we hear it written out. And what's the nimshal? What precisely is the point, and how is this answering our original question? How can it be? Every soul comes from this intense level of God, different than all of creation. Not exactly creator, of course, but not exactly creation, of course. That's what a soul is. So how could that be when we look at Jews and they're so different, and some Jews don't seem spiritually so strong? And yet, this is the definition of the Jew. This is the Jew, so strong. And this is the Jew, so special to God. You know, we could look at Jews, we don't know. We could look at ourselves, we don't know that either. But this is what we're saying. Every Jew comes from the highest level of the highest world. Every Jew comes originally from Chachma Vatzila, seminal wisdom of the world of being. Every soul. And however far that soul wanders, and however concealed those soul's powers might be, still connected to his origin. Still so powerful, still so holy, still so connected to God. Heard something this week that this is dinging in my brain as I'm saying this. As I'm sure many people here, if not every one of us, Obviously, after what happened in Bondi, I was very affected and read and watched and thought, like all of us, a lot. And who were the victims, the casualties? Well, it was 15 people. 15 people these terrorists wiped out, 15 worlds. And of course, we found out afterwards that they meant many more, and they threw 3 homemade bombs, none of which went off, which the bomb squad says makes no sense. They all should have gone off. So we're grateful for the protection, and it wasn't many, many more, but 15 lives is 15 worlds. And originally it came out that 14 Jews and 1 non-Jew, as his friend said, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. A retired detective cop from Sydney, who after he retired became a part-time photographer. And he was there, working the event, taking pictures. And he was also one of the casualties. I saw this 2 days ago. That actually, from people that were there, from eyewitnesses that were there, no, that's not really the story. Because it was a Chabad event. So the rabbi, probably with other people as well, other men, were going around to all the hundreds of people there, asking the men to put on tefillin, phylacteries. And when they came to this area where the photographer was, and I obviously wasn't there, so I don't know if he asked them or they asked him. I don't know exactly the details, because who knows exactly when you hear a story what really was. But somehow they got into a conversation with this man. Oh, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on the phylactery, the tefillin? No, I'm not Jewish. I'm working here. I'm a photographer. Right. Okay. Yeah. So interesting. All right. They said, no, actually, I'm a little bit Jewish. Right. Well, by Judaism, there's no such thing as a little bit Jewish. You're 100% Jewish or you're not Jewish at all. I said, so, how are you a little bit Jewish? Well, my mom's mom was Jewish. But I mean, I don't know, she stopped being Jewish, but obviously my mom wasn't, my dad, yeah. He said, oh, wow. Well, now obviously you're talking to an older person. He's already retired. I don't know if he was in his 60s, 70s. So, but, sort of gently said to him, well, if your mother's Jewish, according to Jewish law, you're 100% Jewish. No partial Jews. You're 100% Jewish. You're not Jewish at all. So you're 100% Jewish. Wow. Well, would you like to put on the tefillin? And he said, yes, he would. And he put on the tefillin. And a short while later, he perished. As we say, he died al Kiddush Hashem. He died as a Jew, sanctifying God's name, dying as a Jew. And that, I'm not going to start giving commentary on it. Nobody needs my commentary. I don't know God's thoughts, but it was like really intense thought for me. That concept of someone who never knew they were a Jew, finds out, does a mitzvah, does a commandment, and then dies as a Jew, dies for being a Jew. And I think this just sort of comes back to this point here of every single soul. Every single soul. There's no soul that's too small or didn't start off in seminal wisdom, highest level of highest world, Chacham Batzilas, or has traveled so far that it's disconnected from its origin and is not relevant to that anymore. Every single soul started off in the highest level of the highest world, Chachma Batzilas, seminal wisdom of the world of being. And every single soul, no matter what the person knows or doesn't know, does or doesn't do, every single soul still can access their inner connection to Chachma Batzilas, the highest level, highest world, literally God's thoughts. וככה ממש כביכול, בשורש כל הנפש רוח הנשמה של כל ישראל למעלה, וירדסם ממדרגה למדרגה, עד ההשתלשלות העליונות הביאה, מחכמתו יתברך. And so too, literally, so to speak, when we're discussing the roots, the source of every level of soul of every single Jew. There's 5 levels of soul. The Rebbe here enumerates the 3 basic ones, meaning we have 5 levels of soul, 3 of which enter into the body of every single Jew. The first level, nefesh, which enters at the time of the circumcision or when the child should receive a circumcision, or by a girl, her naming, when she receives her Jewish name, or when she should receive her Jewish name. The next level, the ruach, which we're told enters at the age of education. That might be age 3. I don't know if that be 3 or 5, somewhere along there. Probably we'd assume 3 is like the classical time we as Jews think of education. And the third level the neshama, which enters at the bar bat mitzvah, 12 for a girl, 13 for a boy. And that happens for every single Jew. And then there are two higher levels of soul called Chaya and Yechida, respectively, which the Chaya comes in only if a person is truly very, very much refined himself. And the Yechida, the highest of the five, which comes in at moments of self-sacrifice, highest moments of Yom Kippur, the Ne'ilah service, every Rosh Chodesh, certain times that are very connected to this Yechida energy. So looking here at the Nefesh Ruach Neshama, that base soul, basic soul, meaning what enters every single Jew, of the entire Jewish people. So what happened? Well, it descended from level to level through the progression of the worlds, of four worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, from the very Chachma, the seminal wisdom of God himself. So the Rebbe is actually telling us a lot of information in these words. The Rebbe says, the soul started off, as we keep saying, Chachma of Atzilus, highest level, God's thoughts, seminal wisdom of the highest world, the world of being. And then they went through the progression of the worlds, what's called Hishtalshalus. Hishtalshalus, the progression, the evolution of the worlds, is from the root word shalsheles. What's a shalsheles? A shalsheles is a chain, but not an S-link chain. Interlocking locks, interlocking loops. That's a shalsheles, that type of chain or necklace. And that's really progression of the worlds, that we have four spiritual worlds. On each world, we have God's energy expressed in vehicles, in vessels. We sometimes call it in kalim, in spiritual energy. It's spiritual energy expressed through a more constricted spiritual energy. We say lights and vessels. Lights means godliness and vessels means godliness. There's only godliness. The only place where there's physical is in the Milky Way, is down here. But we have more revealed light, constricted within more constricted light, a light in a vessel. And on every spiritual world, we have, overarchingly, 10 such vessels, 10 such dimensions called spheros. Spheros, like the word mispar, number, meaning we're taking the infinity of God, because higher than these four spiritual worlds and what we call Seder Hishtalshalus, the progression, the evolution of worlds, basically God is viewed as Ein Sof, infinite. I mean, we could say terms, Kabbalah can give us terms, but in essence, we're saying infinite, beyond numeration, beyond any concept of constriction, which a number would imply. And then we come to Seder Hishtalshalus, otherwise known as the worlds of tikkun, of rectification. When we're rectifying, when we're correcting whatever deliberate design happened in prior spiritual reality. Now we have spheros, we have mispar, we have numeration, we have God's energy limited enough to be, relatively speaking, finite. Obviously, it's not finite, it's God. But compared to infinity, we've got a box, we've got a vessel, we've got a constriction, we've got a greater constriction, we've got numbers, we've got 10, we've got an order. That's the spiritual worlds. And how it works, and I'm saying this for us to understand the progression of the soul, there's a reason we're going into this, is that the lowest level of a higher world descends to become the highest level of the next world. So we have the highest spiritual world from these four worlds, the world of Atzilus. And we know we're starting off the highest level, the highest world, Chachma Atzilus, seminal wisdom of the world of being. And then there's a progression of 10 levels, the spheros. Of course, each sphera, each divine attribute subdivides into like 90 levels. But roughly speaking, level upon level, layer upon layer, until we get to the lowest level of the world of Atzilus, which is called Malchus, sovereignty of the world of Atzilus. Isn't that interesting? Sovereignty is the lowest. Sovereignty has to be completely humble, completely negation of self for it to be sovereign. When we come to the very end of sovereignty of the world of Atzilus, lowest level of the world of Atzilus, this energy itself descends to become the crown, the highest level of the next world, which is called the world of Bria, the world of creation. So the lowest level of the higher world descends to become the highest level of the lowest world. That's the shalshelas. That's the interlocking links. Now, why is this significant? Why are we explaining this? This isn't like Kabbalah 101 here. We're explaining this because every soul travels. How far? Depends on the triptych. Depends on the height of the soul, depends on its journey, depends on how well the soul will use its energies. Every soul travels. And the souls could travel very far from their origin point. But the road they're traveling on all leads back to that first point because of the shalshelas, because it's all interlocking links. There's never a clean break. Well, you're in a new world. No. Even this new world is really a dimension of the previous world. And so to each world. So if you were like climbing back up to your origin, yeah, you can access it because every link leads and is interwoven with every higher link. Every soul comes from seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Batsilas. Wherever the soul descended to, I'm saying climbing a ladder, but I really more like this vision of the Russian stacking dolls, because we could really there see the idea of peeling away a layer and accessing a deeper layer, and peeling away a layer and accessing a deeper layer. And as we're peeling away the layers and accessing deeper and deeper and deeper, we come back to origin point. We come back to seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Batsilas, because it's still within us. It's shalshelas. It's interlocking. We never left it. So we have the world of being. And then like a tremendous drop from there, because the world of being is almost so transparent to God. Their spheros doesn't just mean mispar, number, numeration, boundaries, limits. It also can come from the term Evan Sapir, a luminous stone where you see the lights. You have to be blinded by the lights. Because in the world of Atzilus, the lights of God are so one. The lights, the vessels, God's energy, it's just blinding light. But then we get tremendous constriction to get to the world of Bria, and then constriction till the next world, the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, and then constriction to the next world, the world of Asiya, the world of descent, of action. And then from the very end of Asiya, we come to our physical reality, Asiya Dashmi. But however far that soul traveled, it had roughly 3,600 levels, 900 levels on each world. We could climb back. We could climb within. It's still there. The origin is still there. It's all interlocking. It all goes back to its origin point. So again, this might have been like, woo, those were a lot of words that flew a little bit over my head. But the basic point I'm trying to say is wherever the soul travels to in the spiritual realities before entering this world, she always can access back her origin. And that's a very critical point. Again, as we said in the storyline, and the toenails of the sun are still connected through to the ultimate brain of the Father, the soul, wherever she travels, within herself, really. Unpeeling the layers, she can go all the way back to Chachma Batsilas, seminal wisdom of the world of being. Now we're going to prove this point that all of the worlds really come, in essence, from Chachma Batsilas, seminal wisdom of the world of being, as it says. Oh, we know this verse. Yeah, we already had it early in this chapter. Kulam b'chachma asisa. It's a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim. All of them you made with wisdom. If anyone remembers, which would be super impressive, we had this at the very end of the side note in the beginning of chapter 2 when we were discussing seemingly can we really use this phrase from Maimonides, Huamadu Yodehu Yadua, God is the knower and the knowledge and the ability to know. And we brought in there the perspective of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, and in bringing this in, we brought in this verse from Psalms, Kulam b'chachma sisa, which we explained non-literally. Everything, even Chachma Vatzilas, seminal wisdom of the world of being, highest level, highest world, to you, God, is like a Siyah. It's so low compared to you. which was very relevant in our discussion there. Here, we're looking at a very simple literal truth. Kulam, all of them, everything, all of creation, all of the spiritual realities, b'chachma asisa. You made them all through your chachma, through your seminal wisdom. So understanding this, we have the highest level of the highest world, chachma v'tzilus, seminal wisdom of the world of being. And from that evolved, emerged, every level in the world of Atzilus. Bina and Das and Chesed and Gvura and Tiferes and Netzach Hod Yesod and Malchus. There's really two ways of understanding it because both work together. On one hand, you could think of it very simply in a linear fashion. Chachma, and I'm just saying very simply the 10 overarching levels instead of course, going through all the subdivisions on each level. Chachma, constricted, becomes the Bina, which constricts becomes the Das, which constricts and becomes all the way down to Malchus, the lowest level, sovereignty of the world of being. And then we said sovereignty of the world of being has this massive constriction to become Keser of Bria, the highest level of the next world. And then the same thing happens again. And from the crown of Keser, it becomes Chachma, the seminal wisdom, and all the way down till Malchus, till sovereignty of the world of Bria, sovereignty of the world of creation, which has this massive constriction and becomes the crown of the next world, the world of formation, the world of Yetzirah. That's one true way of understanding it. So you're literally like climbing back up all those steps. So wherever the soul goes to, the soul is climbing back up to get all the way back to Chachma V'Tzilus. Another understanding, maybe a little deeper way of understanding this is Kulam B'Chachma Sisa. No, it's not just a linear causation here, that one leads to the next, which leads to the next, or one is minimized to the next, which is minimized to the next. There's one source, Chachma V'Tzilus. And from seminal wisdom of the world of being, Kulam B'Chachma Sisa, even everything with Chachma, with the seminal wisdom, from Chachma V'Tzilus, seminal wisdom of the world of being, comes all of the dimensions of the world of Atzilus. Comes Bina V'Tzilus and Das V'Tzilus and Chesed V'Tzilus and Gvura V'Tzilus. All the other 9 dimensions of the world of Atzilus all originate in Chachma V'Tzilus. And then from that lowest dimension, Malchus of Atzilus, which then constricts to become Keser, well, that's now another branch, so to speak, we're grafting now, another branch here to create another whole new tree, but that really goes rooted back to Malchus of Atzilus to Chacham Atzilus, meaning, what I'm saying here, to understand the difference of thought, let's say a soul traveled all the way to Chesed of Asiya, 4th dimension on the lowest world. Well, everything in every world goes back to the Chachma of that world. Kulam b'Chachma Sisim, and everything with Chachma, with the seminal wisdom. So if the soul is on Chesed of Asiya, again, going from the branch back to the trunk of that world, I go to Chachma of Asiya, seminal wisdom of this lowest world, the world of descent, the world of Asiya. And Chachma of Asiya is coming from the crown, Keser of Asiya. And what's Keser of Asiya? Oh, now I'm going, my roots are tracing back to the next one, the higher tree. That's the source of this tree. That's the whole world of Yetzirah, the world of formation. So now I'm in that lowest level of the world of formation, Malchus of Yetzirah, sovereignty of Yetzirah, sovereignty of the third world. But it's a branch. What's the trunk? Chachma. Kulam b'Chachma Sis. Everything comes from Chachma, from seminal wisdom. So if I'm hanging out on Malchus of Yetzirah, that really goes back to the root there, to the trunk, the trunk of that tree, which is Chachma of Yetzirah, the seminal wisdom of that world of Yetzirah, of that third world, which again goes back to the crown of that world, which traces back to the sovereignty of the previous world, right? Now the tree is now extending back to its source tree, the world higher than it, the world of Bria, the world of creation. Now we're on the lowest level. We're on Malchus, we're on sovereignty. But this branch again, what was the trunk? Chachma of the world of Bria. Everything goes back to Chachma, the seminal wisdom. So this sovereignty of the world of Bria, sovereignty of the world of creation, is an extension of Chachma, the seminal wisdom of Bria. And going to the Chachma, well, again, that comes from the crown, and that crown goes back to the tree that it's grafting from, the world of being. Malchus, sovereignty, lowest level of the world of being. And where's that from? Oh, well, that branch comes from the trunk, comes from Chachma Vatzilas, from seminal wisdom of that world of being, that world of Atzilus. So again, you might have missed the terms, and don't have a whiteboard here. My handwriting is horrible, so if I wrote it out, you will be able to understand it anyway. But wherever the soul is, whatever spiritual dimension we're on, we can literally peel away those levels and come back to our source. Seminal wisdom of the world of being, Chachma Batzilus, that is not only where we come from. Now you have this term in Yiddish, Landsleik, like we're from the same place. It's not just we come from there, but I mean, haven't seen it in 60 years, right? We're in a new world, a different world. No, it's within us right now. We can unpeel those layers. We can trace back, and we can find it within ourselves right now, within our soul's power now, within every soul's power. Chachma of Atzilus. We just have to peel enough layers. Seminal wisdom of the world of being. It's still traceable. It's still within us now. Nishavu mimenu. So from this came into being. Nefesh ruach neshama shel am haaretz b'chus ha'erech. Since we're saying that every soul starts off in the highest level, the highest world, but then they travel, and we've just been spending a long time to understand that traveling. Eventually, if they travel long enough, these enormous souls, these giants, these spiritual blinding lights get covered over more and more and more. Because every step on the trip is a minimization of the energy, is a covering over, a constriction of the energy. Again, all the energy is there, constricted, covered over. It's not taking anything away. It's just like shrinking it within the package, so to speak. More and more and more concealed, and then more concealed, and then more concealed. Again, remember we said there's 3,600 layers here. We've got 4 spiritual worlds, 10 overarching levels on each world, and each one of those 10 subdivide into 90. So that's 90 times 10, 900 per world, 4 worlds, 3,600 layers. That's a lot of constriction, a lot of concealment, a lot of covering over. So if the soul is destined to travel and travel and travel through all of those layers till the very end, the very lowest dimensions of the lowest world, the world of Asiya, the world of descent, the world of action, from here comes the souls of seemingly the lowest of the people, the Jewish people, the most common people. But even these most common people trace back. You get seminal wisdom of the world of being. So Patty just asked a great question. Does God reside in these layers? Absolutely. Now I'm saying absolutely for a number of reasons. First, because there only is God and there's nothing but God. So everything that is God energy. That's the only building block of matter that there is God energy. A second absolutely is coming because all of these spiritual worlds are all layers, levels of God's energy. As I said, there's nothing physical going on there. It's all God energy. I talk about a light, God energy, a vessel, God energy. All the terms we're throwing around, all God energy. Yes, it does speak of God sitting on a throne. It's not meant in any physical fashion. The throne, as we know, as discussed in Ezekiel and Yechezkel, God's chariot with 4 faces, so to speak, as the legs of the chariot, the face of man, the face of the lion, the face of the ox, the face of the eagle, all represent different spiritual, which then evolve into sources of physical energies. Nothing physical going on any of these worlds. When we say world, it means spiritual realities. And that's why really we're told there's thousands and thousands and thousands of worlds, because every new dimension of God's energy is, so to speak, a world. But we speak in very broad terms of these 4 worlds. So whenever you find, and you can find many references throughout Tanakh, throughout the scriptures, of God's hand, right? God's eyes, the eyes of God on the land. All of these terminologies are for our brain to have a little hook to help us have some understanding of things that are totally metaphysical, totally beyond any physical understanding. We know that when we have the complete redemption with Mashiach, we will see. Your eyes will see your teacher, will see God himself. But we're going to see the God who's totally not physical. And even then, the God's not going to be physical. So what will we see? I mean, God willing, we will very soon find out. But any time there's any physical reference to anything physical of God or of any of the, like accoutrements, it's all spiritual realities. So every dimension of these worlds is spirituality. And a higher spirituality, in essence, the most simple, or not simple, but stripped away of all the terminologies, the way of understanding all of this is a higher spiritual dimension constricts from which emerges a lower spiritual dimension. And that lower spiritual dimension in turn constricts and produces an even lower spiritual dimension, which means that basically all of creation is loss, 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 right? You're making up you're tabulating your earnings, your profits, and the other, your losses. And creation is loss after loss after loss for God. A minimization, which in turn creates another minimization, which in turn creates another minimization, loss, 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 less, 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 less. That's what progression is. That's whole Ishtalshalas, the whole evolution of the worlds means one loss, which then gets even greater, which then gets even greater, which then gets even greater. And when we finally squeeze out this loss that we there's nowhere else to squeeze, there's this massive jump, and then there's another even lower spiritual world, and we go through the same thing with it again. And all of God's losses, so to speak, are to come to this physical reality and to have a Jew, soul and body, do a mitzvah, do an act of service for God. And that act of service is the gain which validates and makes worthwhile all of the losses, all of the minimizations, all of the constrictions for that enormous gain of a Jew doing the commandment of God and serving him and allowing a new God energy to be born, to be created from that act. Anyone else? Anyone else have any other questions about this?
Can you kind of just that original mashal with the seed of the father and creating the whole body, can you kind of correlate the two together?
The mashal with the nimshal?
Yeah.
Sure. To understand it again, let's remember our question. Our question is, the Alter Rebbe has proven, in the beginning of the chapter, that souls are not like anything else. Souls are not like anything else of creation. All of creation is spoken. All creation is God's speech. All creation is external to him. And then there's a soul, and the soul is a piece of him. The soul is from God's very thoughts, and your thoughts are you. The soul is from God's breath, from his inner dimension. So when we learn all that, we're like, wow, then how do some Jews don't look like that at all? How could it be that some souls seem so small when this is what a soul is? Okay, that was our question. The basic answer to that question is all souls start off on this level of Chachma Matzilus, of seminal wisdom of the world of being, but then every soul travels. And as they travel through the progression of the worlds, their powers are more and more concealed. So when the soul comes into a human body, when there's a Jew walking around, soul and body, his soul didn't come straight from seminal wisdom of the world of being, from Chachma Matzilus. His soul could have come from a very, very low level within these 3,600 options. And that's why he doesn't seem to be like we're describing. But we're saying he really is. Because really, all the souls can trace back to their origin. And specifically, and we haven't even discussed this yet in the Nimshal and how this really works, through our connection to the brain of the Jewish people, the tzaddikim, the ultimately righteous Jews that are so one with their origin point, all the rest of us can access that as well. What we were trying to explain today was this idea of how can we access this? We're so far from it. And the Rebbe's point is, no, it's hishtalshalos. It's these interlocking links. So you're never so far from your origin. Your origin is actually inside of you. I mean, again, putting in perspective, space only exists for us. Space is non-existent for godliness. But where is my origin? Within me. If I uncover and uncover and uncover and uncover, trace back, trace back, trace back, every one of us, no matter where our soul arrived at, are going to find our core, Chachma Vatzila, seminal wisdom of the world of being. The mashal, the parable the Rebbe gave to understand that answer is, we have one drop that starts off in the brain of the parent, right? The pituitary gland excretes a hormone from which has become semen, from which has become that beginning incipient drop that will develop to be a child. So that drop, the Rebbe is saying, really started off as brain matter, something from the brain. And now here we have this fertilized egg in a womb, and there's a development happening. And this drop is now differentiating into many different aspects that's going to become a human being. And as that differentiation happens, that drop is evolving and evolving and evolving and changing very much from its origin point. But that was the origin point. And then the second half of the answer, and even after the child is born, that lowest dimension, the toenails are still through the brain of the son, connected to the brain of the father. But again, that first half is a soul could evolve to become, like, so to speak, those toenails. But it started off as brain matter. Every part of the body started off as brain matter. It just evolved over those months. And the evolution is that the lower the thing is, the more time, so to speak, it takes to evolve. Like preemie, a baby who's born earlier might not have nails, right? Wouldn't maybe have eyebrows or hair or eyelashes, or because these are happening, but hopefully it's gonna have a heart, it's gonna have lungs, hopefully, because those things develop first. Why? Because they're higher level functionings. And what's lower happens later because there's more and more evolution, more and more movement from brain matter. Like the souls, the longer they travel, the lower and lower and lower they get. But that baby, all the parts of the baby are really being fed by the brain. They're all connected through the brain. And the brain of the child has the deepest still existing connection to the brain that originated in the brain of the parents. In our case, talking about God, we're saying the brain of the father. So that's how the mashal and nimshal, the parable, and what it represents is really helping us understand the answer to our question.
And the tzaddikim are the brain?
Yes. And the reason why we're calling them the brain, well, that's, by the way, when we say Rebbe, a Rebbe is an acrostic for 3 Hebrew letters, 3 Hebrew words, Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. That's why. Of course, we can compare the tzaddikim, the Rebbe, to like the heart. There's room for that as well, but very much the head from this perspective. How that brain, which is neurologically the center for the whole body, so the whole body is being controlled by that brain, but that brain is also, from the entire body, that which is most similar to the origin point, which in the parable, that part that changed the least, that traveled the least from the soul's original definition as being part of the brain of the father.